All right, I have a quorum here in the room. So I'm going to call us to order on our special called meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. We are in the City Council chambers here at 301 West 2nd Street. It is 10:37 for our scheduled 10:30 time. Colleagues, we have, as we said we would, we cut off sign-ups today at the scheduled time of our meeting, which was 10:30. We made sure everybody that was in line was still able to sign up. It looks like there are about 80 people that have signed up to speak. About 6 of those people have signed up to donate time as opposed to speak. I'm going to treat those as people who have signed up to speak. There was a question that Councilmember Kitchen wanted to raise with respect to donation of time for today. And she was going to be a little late getting here. The Mayor Pro Tem was going to be a little late getting here. I think we need to decide. The first thing we're going to do is start calling people to come up and speak. So I think we need to decide that donation question. As a practical matter for today, I'd be fine with letting people donate time. Since it was raised by Councilmember Kitchen, I'm fine doing that. The question is, how much time are people allowed to donate? Our traditional rule in council meetings is a donation time is a minute. I don't know if we want to stay with that. If we want to stay with that, then even though we have more than 60 speakers signed up, rather than taking the allotted 120 minutes, I would propose that we just give every speaker 2 minutes, with donated time being a minute. That's what I would propose, and I think that'll roughly, potentially equal out. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Leslie?
I just wanted to point out that our usual is to have an equal amount of donated time. If you're a 3-minute person, you get a 3-minute donation. Up until, I know we had some limits on that, and have had some limits on that donation time. It drops after a certain number of people have spoken. So I just wanted to make sure that we were acknowledging that and press for 2 minutes if the people are in the first 60 or so signed up and they're not wishing to speak, but that the donation would be equal to the amount of time they would have had if they were in that segment of speakers that would have gotten that number of minutes.
So I'm trying to figure out how to handle that logistically. Usually what we say is the first 60 minutes, so that would be the first 20 speakers would have then 3 minutes, and then everybody past the first 20 then have the ratcheted time down. And the people in that first 20 have the ability then to donate 3 minutes because they're kind of within that first 20. But as a matter of convention over the last year or so, which because it seemed to be more consistent with what people wanted, I've given the first 20 people to speak the longer allotted period of time, and then just treated the donation time as a shorter period. And that seemed to be something that kind of the general community, that's how I've called it. So the first 20 people to speak got then the longer period, and the donation time was just a minute. And I did that just because it got us deeper into the thing, gave more people a chance to be able to speak. But we could certainly do whatever way here today we would want to. In this case, I would propose we just give all speakers, whether they're in the first 20 or not, the 2 minutes, and then let people donate time. And I would just say donate time at a minute, because I think that would generally equal out. That'd be my recommendation. Okay, so.
And I think that was what Councilmember Kitchen wanted to.
Might very well have been.
To weigh in on. Are we going to wait on that discussion?
Well, I want to start calling speakers, and she's not here. And that's why I said I'm just going to concede the donation of time.
All right.
And I thought that was just a better way to do it. Thank you. All right, so this is what we're going to do, guys.
May I just want to?
Yes. I'm sorry, Councilmember Alton.
So I appreciate that adjustment over what was originally planned, and I'm not going to make an alternative motion because I'm clearly in the minority, but I do want to register that I think that given the magnitude of the code changes that we're making, we should be allowing people more time to speak, and we shouldn't be capping the amount of time that people speak. I'm not going to make a motion to that effect because I do not have a majority on that. But I think that public engagement is important, and I think it's important for us to have the feedback from our community, and I just want to register that that is something that I would value and would like to see done differently. But I'm in the minority, so I will not make that motion.
Okay. So, yes.
Yeah, and I'd agree with what Councilmember Alter is saying. And in fact, at this point, I would like, when we are planning for third reading, to make sure that people have the ample opportunity to have in our public hearing, which I hope that we actually have a special called public hearing for third reading. We've been talking about doing that because we weren't able to do it officially for second reading. That people have the full 3 minutes and then the donation of time, that we handle that public hearing the way we handle any and all other items that generally come before us, without any limitation to only 2 hours worth of public testimony along those lines. But I absolutely register my objections, my deep objections to limiting how much public input we can have at these public opportunities.
Okay. As we schedule for the third reading period of time, I also would join in Councilmember Poole's. I think there should be a day that's set aside to be able to hear from people, and if we schedule that early enough, maybe we can make sure that we get that scheduled. On the days when we're actually set to actually take action, it'd be a hard thing to do, I think, because we may have run out of time where there's no time to do that at all. But I would join in my colleague's suggestion we have a day that's just put aside to let people talk, as we did for first reading. All right, so I'm going to call. Yes.
I want to join my colleagues in concurring about the limitations on speech. I don't support limiting the speakers to 2 minutes on an item of this import. I also found it extraordinarily challenging to have our own questioning and comment time limited as council members during our work sessions last week. And because of the abbreviated time, there really weren't options for sitting down with staff and having long conversations and questioning outside of those opportunities. So all in all, I think there's been extraordinarily limited opportunity to really ask questions and provide feedback, both for council members as well as for the public. And I would ask staff to clarify whether they need some formal direction on that day-long public hearing. And I'll ask that to you, City Manager. Is that necessary to bring an IFC? I think Councilmember Poole talked about maybe bringing an IFC to make sure that happened. Is it necessary, or is this conversation going to be sufficient for that being scheduled?
Councilmember, thank you for raising that. I think this conversation is sufficient.
Great. And I would suggest that we go toward having it on a weekend again, but that we try to identify a weekend where we know all council members can be present, and that it not be, I'm trying to think through what sorts of holidays we have in March, but that we make sure it doesn't fall on a weekend where we know schools are closed on a Friday or a Monday.
Understood.
And for me, I would remind everybody that we have third readings. We have another couple months involved in this, and I just have never, in my time on the council, my 5 years, had as much public input on the various issues as I've been able to have on this, and I really appreciate the public doing that. Certainly speaking in hundreds of opportunities, and people coming by the office, emails that are sent to me. Are things that I consider with equal weight to people that are showing up. I recognize there are a lot of people that can't come to the City Council, and their testimony by email or otherwise is a way that they participate, and I try to give that equal weight and attention to people who show up, because I recognize different people are going to be able to add in different ways. But for me, I'm comfortable with the what I would consider to be just vast opportunities for people to have participated in this. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to call people. Everybody, I'm going to join all three of these things at the same time. So I'm going to call just one time. You can speak to either items 1, 2, or 3, or all of them if you want to, but it's just going to be one time. Everybody that signed up for items 1 or 3 has also signed up for item number 2. Everybody gets 2 minutes, regardless of where you are. You can take donated time from somebody who has signed up, and the donation is 1 minute. We'll do it the way we've done it before, where you can have 2 people donate time, so the max time would be then 4 minutes if you have 2 donations of a minute. With that said, colleagues, today we're scheduled to go all day. Consistent with our earlier conversations, I think we're shooting to try and stop today at 5 o'clock. Tomorrow and Thursday, we start later in the day. And I would propose that we keep our schedules open to, say, like 11 or something like that. We can decide, as we get closer what we need to do. But in terms of making arrangements for families or other kinds of stuff, keeping Wednesday and Thursday, tomorrow and Thursday, open till 11, I think would be helpful for our conversations. Today we're going to start with the testimony or the public comments. After we have done that, I'm going to ask that the staff give us their brief presentation. It should take about 15 minutes. And then we will go into executive session so that council can talk to us. When we come out of executive session, I will entertain a motion. That'll be our base motion. The base motion that I will entertain will be the staff recommendation plus the amendments that council has provided, less the amendments that people are pulling off of what my colleagues have offered. So the base motion, again, will be the staff recommendations on 1, 2, and 3, plus the accumulated amendments that have been posted, less the items on that list that people are pulling. And in that regard, once we have the base motion made and seconded, we will then turn to the amendments that have been filed, and we will go through those just to see which ones people want to pull and which ones are made then part of the initial base motion. Colleagues, we received amendments that were posted on the board on Friday, following the same format that we used last time. They were compiled, and there was a document that was posted that was proposed LDC second reading amendments that was posted on the message board early Monday morning. Subsequent to that, Council Member Harper Madison has made some changes to some of her amendments and reordered some of her amendments. So there is a second document that compiles everything with those changes that Councilmember Harper Madison made, which was posted this morning, which is the same thing. It has V2 at the top, and it has it being updated at 8:30. I have copies of both of those documents, both the one that was posted from Friday's amendments, plus the one that incorporates hers, and I will hand those out in just a second so that you have both of those two documents. We can either go with the document that was posted Monday morning with yellow sheets from Councilmember Harper Madison for the changes that she has made, or we can do the V2, but I'm going to hand those out and we can have that conversation a little bit later when people have had a chance to look at them and see what they're comfortable with doing. All right, I'm prepared to go either way. I'm indifferent as to which is the will of the dais. That said, I think those are all the housekeeping things. We could go and start calling on people. Does anybody on the dais want to say anything before I start calling people? All right. Then I'm going to work off the list for number 2 because that has everybody. And we're going to start, if you want donated time but didn't sign up to do that based on the earlier thing, but you want donated time now, just come up to the microphone and say who it is that's donating your time, and the clerk will make sure that we get that into the record. Okay? So let's begin with Timothy Bray. Is Mr. Bray here? You have 2 minutes. I think you can be wherever you want to be. Okay? And James Howard is on deck. Is Mr. Howard here? Okay, you have time donated from Jason Burrows. Is Jason Burrows here? Okay, so you'll have then 2 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Bray.
Dear Council, I'm here representing... Okay, there we go. Dear Council, I'm here representing ORA to talk about a few of our recommended amendments. First, we want to allow internal guest suites. These are allowed in the current code in some form, but should be allowed without age restrictions and without counting towards the unit restrictions. Second, remove form requirements for missing middle housing. Attached versus detached shouldn't matter. Flexible forms makes it easier for missing middle housing to comply with deed restrictions, protect trees, and take advantage of the preservation bonus. Third, expand transition zones and/or remove compatibility triggers to prevent compatibility standards from restricting the development of multifamily housing on corridors, especially in high opportunity areas. Fourth, eliminate minimum lot sizes. The 5,000 square foot minimum lot size still leaves us with one of the largest minimum lot sizes in the country. Minimum lot sizes serve only to make neighborhoods more expensive and exclusive. Removing minimum lot sizes is an easy way to increase unit count and make smaller houses on smaller lots viable. Fifth, change the definition of dwelling units in group residential to make co-ops and co-housing viable. The second draft defines these units differently from every other use and effectively reduces the number of allowed units by 2/3 for co-ops. As it stands, draft 2 is the sweet spot of failure. It pretends to introduce meaningful reform while failing to do so in practice. Passing a new code that's effectively the old code with only a few modest changes is effectively rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Is that what you want your legacy to be? That you failed to meaningfully address our housing crisis? That you largely maintained a land use code that is devastating our environment? I don't believe that is what the majority of you are here to do. You have a mandate to pass a meaningful, forward-thinking 21st century land use code. I think the last election shows that. So I think let's pass a land use code that reflects what we want our city to be in 30 to 50 years, not what it was 30 to 50 years ago. I believe that you can do it. I believe that the politics of hope and progress can overcome the politics of fear and misinformation. I believe that we can do our part to address our climate crisis, and I believe that we can make it awesome for everyone. Lastly, I just wanted to say that we should stop treating missing middle housing like it's some kind of blight that is bad for neighborhoods and neighborhood character. The fact that we ban missing middle housing in most of Austin, even under the new code, even in central Austin, is an absurdity that we somehow have accepted as normal. The default should be to allow it without really good reasons to not have it. That our neighborhood character should not be one of exclusion. It should be one of inclusion, and it should be one where diversity is a good thing. Thank you for your time, and I believe, I hope you all can do the right thing and think about where we'll be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call a number of people. I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we have an array of microphones in front of us to move us through. So would James Howard please come on down? Is Bruce Weiland here? I want you to come on to the table as well. Is Bill Fowler here? Why don't you come down? Is Michael Nahas here? Why don't you come down too? Is Dave Piper here? Why don't you come on and join us? And I think that gives me space for one more. Is Wace here? Why don't you come as well? And then to speak, you need to make sure that your button is pressed. All right, Mr. Howard, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm here to talk about a very specific part of North Loop, the North Loop neighborhood. I brought a zoom in of the area I'm discussing. Can I hand that out or just give it to Kathy? And
If you give it to the clerk.
Sorry.
That's okay. If you give it to the clerk, she'll hand that out for you.
We put it on the overhead, please. Great.
Why don't you give it to the person? You can either stand or sit, whichever you prefer.
So my name is James Howard.
And if you want to wait just a second, I paused your time. So.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members. My name is James Howard. I am the president of the North Loop Neighborhood Association. I'm also the chair of the North Loop Neighborhood Plan Contact Team. I'm here today to talk to you about a very specific part of our neighborhood, but it's really the core, the central piece of our neighborhood. It's the portion that runs between Duval on the east side and really all the way to Link on the west side, from 51st on the south side into Koenig on the north side. A quick note about North Loop, and a lot of y'all know this, and I've dealt with Kathy and Councilmember Tovo and Councilmember Kazar for years, and have appreciated their assistance and their help and advocacy. We're not adverse to upzoning, just as a general rule, and we've been pretty accommodating. In our neighborhood plan, you'll see that we designated a lot of, say, 53rd, which is a main corridor running through our neighborhood for mixed use and vertical mixed use. So that's something that we're not adverse to, and as a general rule. I will say, though, that because this part of our neighborhood sits at the intersection of a TPN and an activity corridor, as designated in the new code, there's going to be a monumental shift in entitlements in this block. This block is largely, and I would say almost 98, 99% currently single-family use. So what we're going to see here is we're going to see a massive kind of increase in entitlements. I'm here to pass along to you that the people in my neighborhood, many of the people, have passed serious concerns to me and have asked me to come to speak to you. And really, we're asking for not miles of change. We're not asking for the council to throw out this LDC. There's lots of good parts in this LDC, but a more nuanced approach and a more nuanced look, particularly at Duval, and particularly consider taking Duval and Avenue H in that area down to R4 as opposed to RM1, and also potentially eliminating the exceptions that apply to corridors in the current code that would allow all of these entitlements in this currently just residential neighborhood to be built out without any kind of parking minimums, anything like that, because, again, of the place where it just happens to sit, which is at this unusual intersection of a corridor and of a TPN. So I appreciate your consideration and the council members' time in looking at this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Howard.
Okay. I'm not hearing the buzzer go off. That's okay. Go ahead.
Thanks for being here and for the comments. And I know that we've all gotten emails from other North Loop residents, especially in the last couple of weeks. Could you help me understand? I haven't had an opportunity to go through yet and count the lots in North Loop, but we have gotten a few emails from people who believe that most of North Loop has been proposed for transition zoning. I haven't been able to verify that, and I'm not sure if you have, but what are you hearing or what are you observing about the boundaries of your neighborhood and the extent to which that this has rezoned to RM1 or R4?
Sure, and again, because of this, what's happening here with 53rd being an activity corridor and Duval being a TPN, we've seen a lot of upzoning across what's likely more than 50% of our lots. Tody Larson is going to speak later here. He lives on Duval. He has told me that his calculations say about 72% of the lots are being upzoned. Another one of our members of the neighborhood association, Mike Wong, who some of you may know, Mike's position is that really 100% of the lots are being upzoned because, obviously R2B and R2C have higher entitlements than current SF3. And so the numbers that I'm being told from my people are anywhere between, and I've run the math and seen at a minimum kind of 52, 53 to 72 to, of course, if you adopt kind of that Mike's view of the world, 100% of the lots.
Okay, but in terms of transition zoning, it lands somewhere between more than 50 to potentially about 72. And I'll do my best to verify that. According
to my visual view, and then what other folks who've looked at the map and done the counting, yes, more than 50%.
Yeah, that aligns with my visual impression. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Mayor, for what it's worth, that aligns with my visual impression as well, although I haven't counted the lots.
Okay. Bruce Weiland.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Weiland, and I live in the Zilker neighborhood. The current code is 1,062 pages with 38 base zones, while the proposed code is 1,382 pages with 42 base zones, not even counting the added Q, V, and W zone designations. Plus, the F25 zone requires retaining the current code. What happened to the goal of making the new code simpler and less complex? The latest draft was released on January 31st. How is the public supposed to fully evaluate a code of this length in only 10 days, as we're here at the hearing today? I have time to specifically address only three of the many problems I see with the proposed code. The supposed goal of the house scale preservation incentive is to encourage preservation of smaller, affordable homes. I can certainly see how it incentivizes more density, increased FAR, and increased impervious cover, but I am at a loss to see how it encourages preservation when it allows demolition of up to 50% of the exterior walls and complete removal of the exterior finishes. This type of preservation will not save the smaller missing middle homes that the city pretends it wants to protect. The proposed code modifies the McMansion rules in such a way as to allow for more massive structures. Among other things, it removes the tent requirements, changes the articulation requirements, changes the carport definition, and allows additional exemptions. In addition, properties are granted even more FAR under certain conditions. Although the character of the neighborhood is changing under the existing McMansion rules, the new ones will only speed the process and change the character even more. The proposed code allows a builder to pay fee in lieu of sidewalk construction rather than actually building sidewalks on the site. Had this not been allowed, Zilker would now have many sections of sidewalk that would have and would have an almost complete network in the coming years after the job of demolishing all of the older homes is accomplished. Payment of fee in lieu of sidewalk construction should be eliminated, especially given the proposed reduction in requirements for on-site parking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So I hope you're sharing that information with everyone. That would be helpful because I appreciate the list of concerns that you have about the preservation incentive. So.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. My name is Bill Fowler. I live in...
Hang on a second. I don't think your microphone's on. Will you press that button?
The green...
There's a button on the stand.
It's on.
Okay.
Are we muted? Right.
Hello?
There we go.
Hello?
Got it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Bill Fowler. I live in Pemberton Heights, District 9. I'm a fourth-generation Austinite. Lived in my neighborhood for over 50 years. Neighborhood's bordered by Old Enfield and Bracker Woods on either side of 24th Street between Lamar and Mopac. These neighborhoods were platted before World War II. The homes were built in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Most of these old homes still exist. Neighborhoods are beautiful and classic, and they exist the way that they were planned. Single-family homes, front yards, and nice big trees. The neighborhoods are enjoyed by residents, by guests, and by Austinites who walk and run on our streets. Code Next will be very destructive to these neighborhoods and comes at a very high cost of degrading quality of life and public safety. The fabric of these beautiful, well-planned neighborhoods will be destroyed and old classic homes replaced with ugly, modern structures on small lots. Streets will be clogged with cars and trash cans. Traffic will increase, endangering children and pedestrians. Emergency vehicle access will be hampered and taxes will go up. The benefits to the city of Code Next plans for these neighborhoods are infinitesimal. New residences will add a tiny fraction of a percent of needed housing. New residences will not be affordable. They will cost millions of dollars. You simply cannot justify the high cost of Code Next in these neighborhoods. The issue is larger than these neighborhoods. It's all about Austin. It's about Austin and its citizens. We all think of Austin as being a special place, and it is. You have the power to keep it special, and you have the power to allow Austin to degrade into a typical large city sameness. Destroying historical fabric of Austin, whether it's in these neighborhoods or elsewhere, is going to degrade Austin. Why be destructive with no meaningful benefit? You also have the power to stand up for the citizens of Austin who have raised their families and made their lives in these neighborhoods. You have the power to not sell out to the newcomers and the real estate developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nahas.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Is it microphone?
Go ahead.
There you go. My name is Michael Nahas, and I'm an economist. Austin needs a full-time economist. I've been trying to duplicate a study by Giorco and Glaser in my free time with donated data and paying from my own pocket for access to Google Maps services. So those two researchers, they looked at the price of a lot as not just the price of the land, but the price also, the lot also includes the price of the right to build a housing unit on that land. Their study concluded that San Francisco was expensive not because the land was expensive, but because of the price of the legal right to build a housing unit was expensive. I've been trying to duplicate that study for Austin. I've seen indications that it exists here. I'm going to try and finish my analysis and let you know the results. If it exists, City Council needs to increase the legal rights to build housing units, or rents, especially for low-income people, will continue to increase. But this study would be better done by a full-time economist who could pay for data. An economist could also help with the affordable housing program. I took a look at it, wrote a report. I sent that to my council member Tovo and talked to staff about it. The affordable housing program repeats mistakes made in other cities, some of which are tying the benefit to the housing unit rather than the resident. This discourages the resident from moving for a better job. It has different rules if the resident owns or rents the unit. There are additional rules for developers, architects, builders, whatever of these units, which discourages building of the affordable units. It asks city staff to set the price on affordable units, something I don't think they're well suited to do. It defines affordable as 80% of HUD's median family income, which because of technicalities may include more than half of all Austinites.
Thank you very much. Sir, I think you're next. It's Dave Piper.
I'm Dave Piper, the president of the Zilker Neighborhood Association. The proposed land development code is not simplified. It's complicated, confusing, and contradictory. It's going to produce endless cases at the Board of Adjustment. Section 4C on trees is a prime example, and there's lots more. Preserved heritage trees on the corridors. They're the face of Austin that people see most often. Places like Matt's El Rancho have deep lots with many large oaks. Other examples in my neighborhood include Uchi and Opas, the huge trees there. The proposed zoning on Kinney Avenue and other places will incentivize replacement of many market affordable units. MU zoning in those areas is too much. The ZNA Zoning Committee submitted a plan with a map, but we haven't had any response from the city on that. We managed to achieve more dwelling units than the proposed LDC without using transition zones. A big promise of transition zone was sidewalks, but there's no funding in place for those sidewalks. We're still at the BOA occasionally for interpretation on the existing land code, and it's 30 years old. So this vague language is just going to engender just over and over that kind of stuff. I think the preservation incentives are another good example of confusing language. I was trying to look at it last night, and it's tough. That's 3C 3060, by the way. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to let Mr. Piper know that the council talked on first reading about the plans that various neighborhoods and parts of town had submitted, and we're expecting to have another conversation over these 3 days about the process for considering those. And I just want to thank Zilker for doing the work to look at your neighborhood and identifying how you can account for additional dwelling units without just a one-size-fits-all approach from transition zones. So there will be my understanding is there will be a process for addressing those, and before we finish our second reading, we'll have a conversation to confirm what that process is. We laid it out on first reading. I want to confirm it again so people have some transparency and understanding about how the council will address those proposals that you and other neighborhoods have submitted.
I look forward to that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you here today. My name is Avez Azhar, and I serve on the steering committee of Planning Our Communities. Planning Our Communities, or POC, is a group of people of color who are affordable housing and economic opportunity advocates, community organizers, and social justice activists. Our mission is to promote equitable access to healthy and affordable homes for communities of color and working class people in Austin through outreach, education, and advocacy. Planning Our Communities envisions a land development code that advances the interests of people of color and working class people in this city. We have been encouraged by the second draft reading of the land development code because it provides more opportunities for equitable development and increased affordable housing throughout the city, particularly through the inclusion of the intent of the equity overlay. And I thank you all for supporting that on first reading. While the second reading draft of the land development code responds substantially to concerns about displacement and housing capacity in high opportunity areas, we hope that the protections provided to gentrifying areas can be strengthened. Moving forward, we suggest that we support the preservation of existing multifamily throughout the city and map it to current use. We have an amendment from Councilmember Kassar that maps it to current RM zones and is supported by Bullet 1 of Councilmember Kitchen's Amendment 7 and Councilmember Poole's Amendment number 5. And I appreciate the work that has been put into this. Furthermore, I ask that we support easing group residential throughout the city, and Councilmember Harvey Madison has proposed a number of amendments that would support this. We also ask that to protect additional neighborhoods from displacement in the future, we identify a clear process for updating the Equity Area Affordable Housing Bonus Program, and also to ensure that the intent of the equity overlay is moved forward. Addressing these concerns will reinforce the affordable housing, anti-displacement, and equitable development measures that have been included in the second reading of the draft. I thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to talk here today and for working towards a more equitable code that we can support on third reading. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the next panel is Kendra Garrett here. Why don't you come on down? What about Kathy Mitchell? Is Kathy Mitchell here? Not yet. What about Tom Downing? Come on down. Shane Johnson? Come on down. Jao Connolly? Thank you. You have time donated from Pam Brubaker. Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes when you speak, Mr. Connolly. And then is Emily Sawyer here? Come on down. And then the last person on our panel will be Larissa Rodnoff. Why don't you come on down? All right, Ms. Garrett, you have 2 minutes.
Hello. Okay, just make sure it works. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak on the second reading of the LDC. My name is Kendra Garrett, and I'm with the Austin Justice Coalition and with Planning Our Communities. I first want to say thanks to all the city staff for answering my many questions through this process. This draft is better visually on the code and within the code language. We don't want to see the population of people of color and working class to continue to diminish, and I think the strides taken in this code indicate the city doesn't want that either. The inclusion of the requirements from the equity overlay and the creation of the Equity Affordable Area Affordable Housing Bonus Program is intended to provide support for communities on the gentrification spectrum, from minimized transition zones to higher on-site affordable housing requirements. This will hopefully allow families to remain in their communities and benefit from the new and current amenities that will continue to rise as the city progresses. One part of the code that I did want to pay special attention to is tenant protections. I'm a renter, and this is a city of majority of renters. But I think too often the external conversations revolve around homeowners, and the renters really don't get any love. Renters don't get proper protections afforded to them by the state law, and so I'd like to highlight a couple things in this code that provide those kind of protections, which include source of income protection and the right to reserve, the city right to reserve the right to subsidize units to provide deeply affordable or just more affordable units across the city. But within the code language, I'd like to ask for the consideration to apply the following tenant protections within the general provisions of the affordable housing bonus programs generally. The right to return for redevelopment of existing multifamily properties, which is included in the Equity Area Affordable Housing Bonus Program, and also the federal law related to tenants' right to organize, which is included into the Affordability Unlocked bonus program. If you include it into the general provisions, it will allow for more uniformity and protections for all renters, regardless of bonus program utilized or where they live across the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom Downing.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Hang on 1 second, please.
May I ask the last speaker a question?
Yes.
Kendra, would you mind sharing with us what it is that you do professionally?
I work as a policy regulatory manager for affordable housing nonprofit called TAP.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Downing?
I'm Tom Downing. I'm speaking on behalf of the Austin Justice Coalition, which seeks to represent residents and communities which are impacted by segregation and displacement. We believe that the Land Development Code provides a key avenue to bring all residents into conversation on the legacy of segregation, and we hope it will help unravel policies that have created a divided city. We know that there's a delicate balance between increasing affordable housing and also protecting character of historic neighborhoods, especially those of the most vulnerable. We appreciate what the council has done so far. We appreciate the inclusion of the equity overlay by Mayor Pro Tem Garza, especially the elimination of some of the susceptible gentrification zones. We appreciate the increase in the equity affordable housing bonus program. We appreciate the right to return requirement that's been included. We also appreciate the inclusion of source income protection for tenants and the revision of the preservation program to allow residents to stay in place when their property is redeveloped. We thank you for your efforts, and we hope that you continue to improve the process.
Thank you, Mr. Downing. Shane Johnson.
All right. Thank you, Council and Mayor Pro Tem. Shane Johnson, he, him pronouns, volunteer with Austin Justice Coalition. So I'll reiterate what Tom was emphasizing about how the Land Development Code is a huge opportunity to address the legacy of segregation in Austin, in a city that remains and has been one of the, if not the most economically segregated major city in the U.S., and that's something that we're talking about economics and wealth. It has to be addressed at the level of land use. And this, we have to bolster economic and racial equity for people of color in Austin with a special emphasis on housing and access to opportunity across the city. I'll specifically mention that given that the new code eliminates the possibility of adding additional NCCDs, neighborhood combining conservation districts, under F25, maintaining the current ones will solidify a pattern of exclusionary zoning and move towards a future that still permits certain neighborhoods to retain special status, which makes it more difficult to plan the city equitably and consistently. We recommend allowing for the possibility of future revision of the F25 zoning category and a sunset clause for F25. And again, we need to apply tenant protections uniformly across all city-funded or incentive programs to provide consistency and ease for both developers and renters. I'll end it there and give you a little bit of time back, but thank you for hearing us, and we really need to start addressing Austin's legacy of segregation and racism that maintains through today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joe Connolly, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jean-Paul Connolly. I work on housing with the Austin Justice Coalition, and I'm also part of the steering committee for POC. And when we first signed up to testify, we debated whether we should sign up as neutral or for. We decided to sign up as neutral, and then we changed it to for. And the reason is because while there are still things that we are concerned about and things that we hope can be improved in the second draft, by and large, we're encouraged by this code and the process. We're encouraged by how responsive staff has been to all of our questions. We're encouraged by the way the second map looks radically different than the first map. We're encouraged by the fact that gentrifying areas are going to receive a unique treatment, a kind of a nuanced approach to gentrifying areas. We think that we're in this unique place when AJC looks at these issues, because we think that both the unqualified calls for more density and the unqualified calls against densification in neighborhoods, both those have a kind of historic legacy in racism in Austin and have led to the displacement of people of color. So we need a nuanced approach. And I want to thank you all for the amendments in the first draft that got us closer to that. I want to continue to reiterate my support for the equity overlay, especially for the requirements for affordable on-site units. I hope we don't reduce those requirements, even if in some instances they may discourage redevelopment and we don't know if developers will take the bonus. We prefer that at this moment to really try to fight and see if we can get those on-site required affordable units, especially in gentrifying neighborhoods in the vulnerable parts of the city. The other thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to say that we still need to fight for increased housing capacity, because our message was not to reduce housing capacity. Our message was to shift housing capacity, to look for opportunities for housing capacity in Austin's high opportunity neighborhoods. And I think we should still fight that good fight. We should continue to find places in high opportunity neighborhoods in Austin that will not lead to further displacement, that will not contribute to the displacement of people of color, where we can put more transition areas, more R4 housing and things like that. We continue to encourage council and staff to look at roads such as Spicewood Springs, Enfield, and Jollyville as places where there could be very reasonable opportunities for a little more density along some of these corridors without really incentivizing any major displacement or anything like that. So again, the call is let's get more housing capacity and more affordable housing capacity out of the second draft, and let's find it in places where it won't incentivize the displacement of people of color. I think
Mayor,
I got a little, okay, thank you, that's all I have to say.
I wanted
Thank
to
you,
note
Councilmember
that,
Poole.
yeah, I just wanted to note that the timer wasn't on for the gentleman. It looks like
Apparently
it's
the
stuck.
timer's not working, so it's happening independent of that, and it's also happening on my
Okay,
phone
good.
so we're trying to do it two different places. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ms.
Can
Sawyer.
I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Councilman Kitchen.
I'll be very short. If you could share your remarks with us, I'd appreciate that.
I'm sorry?
If you could share your remarks with us.
Yeah.
I mean, I invite everyone to, but I wanted to follow up with you.
Yeah, and I believe a letter was sent yesterday.
Was it? Okay.
To all council members, but I'd be happy to continue to communicate about this.
Okay, thank you.
And, sorry, I also have that letter printed out, and I can pass it to, so it can be handed out as well.
That'd be great. Give it to the clerk, she'll pass it out. All right, Ms. Sawyer, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning. I'm a volunteer with Austin Justice Coalition. We are appreciative of the ongoing efforts to protect vulnerable populations in our city, specifically provisions currently included in the equity overlay. We ask that this focus continue as you look through the amendments before you. I also want to point out when we use words like vulnerable that that's not an innate thing about the people that we're talking about, but that's a created position that we've put them in as a society. So I want to make sure that we're clear on our language when we use words like that those are choices and policy decisions that we've made, not things about people themselves. We strongly support revisions proposed to co-housing and group housing definitions by the Austin Cooperative Business Association to allow 2 to 6 unrelated persons per sleeping unit, as well as to allow group residential by conditional use permit in all residential zones. And we are looking forward to you all as we continue to look with a racial and economic justice lens to policy and programming changes so that we are all working together to create the equitable, just city we claim we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larissa Rodnoff.
Hi, I'm also here with the Austin Justice Coalition, and I am grateful for the opportunity to speak again. I just want to encourage you to listen to these people of color from our city and listen to communities of color in communities most impacted by segregation and displacement. The LDC gives us a great opportunity to begin to unravel the policies that have created a divided and segregated city. And I encourage you to continue with the equity overlay to do this. And we ask for your consideration of some recommendations, and I want to reiterate what Shane has said already about the NCCDs. They continue the legacy of segregation and exclusion in our city, and that is not a good thing for anybody, but especially not for people who are vulnerable to displacement. We'd really like to see a sunset clause for F25 and future revision of the F25 zoning category so that we can end these exclusionary policies. That's it.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for the panel. Let me call the next panel. Is Toddy Larson here? And you have time donated from Kelly Larson. Is Kelly Larson here? Okay. All right, what about Sven Stryker? No? All right, you have 2 minutes. Is Paulina Ramirez here? Nelly Paulina Ramirez? Why don't you come on down? Is Carlos Chavez here? Carlos Chavez? Yes? What about Karen Piper? Is Karen Piper here? No? Okay. I don't have Karen yet. What about Susan Moffett? Why don't you come on down? Is Joseph Piper here? Joseph Piper? What about Karen McGraw? Is Karen here? Not yet. Is Margaret Carico here? No? Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. And then I think we have one more spot at our table. Is Frank Carico here? Carico, why don't you come down? All right, let's begin with Toddy Larson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for being here and hearing us out on this one. The theme I want to get across here is context-sensitive approach. I'm a resident of Austin. I'm raising a family of 4 with my wife. We live on Duval Street, which is getting upzoned significantly, and we live in North Loop neighborhood. The Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, it's promoting density along transport priority networks, and it follows the principle that IA corridors and TPNs have high-density commercial zoning facing the corridor. I ask that IA and TPN corridors that are fronted with residential units, specifically Duval Street in the North Loop neighborhood, shouldn't be prioritized for the same transition area or intensity as other commercial areas are being asked for, and shouldn't be considered for RM1 zoning up from S3. Duval Street between 53rd and 56th is getting recognized as a TPN based on the current zoning of Route 7. There's a few key issues here that make Duval require this contextual approach. Duval is a much narrower road. It has no bike lanes on it. It has parking on both sides of it. There's no commercial on it. It's all single-family homes. It has no more capacity to handle additional mass transit on it. Right now, the Route 7, which I take every day to UT, is at capacity. It's at standing room only in the mornings and in the evenings. It's at a 15-foot frequency. The fact that the Route 7 has to make multiple right turns to get through our neighborhood limits the size of the bus. You can't go any bigger. You're at capacity with Route 7. So although it is a TPN network, and we agree with that, we'd like a little consideration of how much more transit it could actually have on it. Regarding the numbers, James spoke before me. By my estimate, 72% of all the SF3 homes in the North Loop neighborhood are getting upzoned to RM1 or R4. I did that by point counting every single one, and I'd like to point to Kathy Tovo's request in Amendment 3 that we actually have tools that help us understand how to do this. It's very hard to know the effects.
Great, thank you very much.
Mayor, I have a quick question for the
please.
speaker.
Yes.
Thank you for your testimony about riding the 7 to campus. It's been a while since I've done the same. Can you explain what happens when you reach campus in terms of the ridership?
I mean, that's where I get off. I'd say the majority of Route 7 services North Loop neighborhood to the University of Texas. And then after that, the next bulk of the ridership goes down to the capital area. So it's primarily a server from North Loop to the campus. And I'd like to point that out as well. We risk I'd like to ask, the proximity that North Loop has to UT puts at risk this neighborhood with RM1, converting single-family homes, or those with ADUs, to 10-unit apartments that will service UT students, which isn't a bad thing. We advocate that, but consider that a lot of that could actually happen in our neighborhood.
And we've asked Cap Metro for some ridership numbers to try to determine how much of that ridership are UT students. I have heard anecdotally that a good number of them are. Some go on to the Capitol complex. So thank you for speaking about
and
the
I've worked with
existing
Cap
capacity.
Metro. The Cap Metro was actually trying to remove Route 7 from North Loop neighborhood, and I fought to keep that there. And they removed it from Avenue F because there was no ability for the buses to get through it due to congestion. And so I advocated for it to go on my street on Duval to keep it there. And they're working with us to do that, but it is a temporary reroute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez.
Hi, my name is. My name is Nellie, and I'm here on behalf of the Castlewood Forest Oak Valley Neighborhood Association in South Austin. I've reached out to all of you with a letter from our neighborhood. The majority of our neighborhood is being upzoned to R2A and R4. This is all being done without codified assurances for infrastructure improvements, sidewalks, or with insufficient flood protections. We already have weekly water main breaks in our neighborhood due to the high water pressure that is required to service our large area, in addition to water tables that quite literally seep through the ground in our lower-lying streets after bouts of rain. How will the city have the resources to address these on an even larger scale if they are barely getting taken care of now? Our safe and walkable streets would be cluttered with 4 to 6 more cars per lot, both parked and driving through, cutting visibility and erasing the only safe walkable routes we have to school, parks, and the grocery store. We have no sidewalks and nowhere near enough existing public transportation access within under a mile to dissipate reliance on automobiles. Although we understand the need for more housing, the new land code development does not guarantee affordable units within our neighborhood and does not account for any potential flooding, infrastructure overload, tree canopy risks, or unsafe walking conditions that would result from the increase in units. We ask that your next votes be delayed until these concerns can be more adequately addressed for the city as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chavez, you're going to be next. And clerk, 18 and 20 are not here. 17 and 19 are sitting at the panel. Go ahead, Ms. Chavez, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm kind of nervous. Austin is facing many problems. Lack of affordable housing, rapid growth, and gentrification. Council, you have a hard decision in front of you. Although each of you represents unique districts that illustrate the stark segregation found in the city, at the end of the day, you'll make a decision that affects the entire city. The LDC update should be ready to address historical and present exclusionary housing practices that removes opportunity from thousands of current and future Austinites. Historically, zoning has been a tool of exclusion for people of color and low-income housing in neighborhoods with the best services. Quality of life is certainly at stake. Increased housing prices threaten to lock out the most marginalized populations who seek economic freedom and opportunity. Austin is full of creative people from everywhere. The agglomeration of knowledge and creativity gives Austin a certain je ne sais quoi that makes it a victim of its own success. Relying on cars as a primary means of transportation is expensive. Imagine the freedom in saving your money and not buying a car. For most people, cars are a depreciating asset. Good public transportation is supported by dense housing. Without appropriate amounts of density, investing in public transport fails short and runs the potential of being financial boondoggles. The biggest source of carbon emissions in Austin is a car. Many trips taken by cars in Austin are by solo commuters who do not have convenient amounts of public transit to commute with, simply because density doesn't exist where they live. The city of Austin is facing issues that any robust city would have, and they should be addressed dynamically with policy. The people who showed up to the last council hearing on the LDC revision weren't reflective of the city's population, and we're all aware of this fact, I imagine. It was overwhelmingly white, older homeowners. We missed input from people of color, working families, college students, and renters. Austinites want to think broadly and move the needle. Doing nothing isn't a choice. Let's have dense and accessible neighborhoods that eliminate the need for a size-fits-all lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moffitt.
I'm Susan Moffitt. First, the comp plan is supposed to inform planning and zoning, not the other way around. Going back now to insert transition areas after staff has already drafted them is like backdating a marriage certificate to make the baby look legitimate. This kind of after-the-fact butt covering is sadly symptomatic of a deeply flawed process that has plagued this effort from the start. If the city had put the same energy into community-based planning that it's spent trying to hide the ball from the public for the last 7 years, I really believe we could be moving forward from a place of consensus instead of the terrible divisions we have now. I don't think it's too late. The community is willing to do our part, but please let us help you plan, and please support item 3 to aid with that. Second, this draft still grants huge new base entitlements in RM1 and R4 without any affordable on-site units. Even the fee in lieu doesn't kick in until you hit 5 to 7 units, which is double or triple the current entitlements without any affordability requirement. And we still don't even know what the fee is. What this means is you will get 0 affordable units in transition areas or high opportunity areas where these zones are mapped. In my own neighborhood, you're actually incentivizing the demolition of existing market affordable missing middle housing and replacing it with unaffordable new housing. Proposed upzonings will likely raise the average cost of a central Austin lot by 50 to 70% for the land alone. My neighborhood is over 70% renters, none of whom will be protected once prices, taxes, and rents start to surge with these new entitlements. We need planning, we need improved financial analysis to ensure that we're actually making things better with this new code, not worse. So I please hope you will take the time to get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carrico.
Hi.
Oh, here you go.
Oh, thanks. I'm Margot Carrico, and in my neighborhood, Dorothy Richter passed away this week, and she was the forerunner of our neighborhood, and her role was basically to show, don't tear down our houses. They're fine. Things can be used over and over again because they're so well built. They're built, with solid wood. They are not throw-outable. They're here. We have a middle-class neighborhood. We have this missing middle that you keep talking about. We've got childcare, restaurants, grocery stores, banks, churches, clinics. We've got middle-class families living there right alongside student rentals. This NCCD was created to try to keep houses from being torn down, and it provided for density within the neighborhood. That density has not even been used. What's happening is a land grab. There was a bus that pulled up. One of my neighbors saw everybody coming off the bus, and she said, well, what are you looking at? And they said, we're from Dallas, and we're here to look at the investment zone. I mean, Lady Bird Johnson started the beautification of highways because she said, do you want to drive down every highway and have them looking exactly the same? She said, when you pass certain regions and areas and habitats, you should be able to see that on your roadways. Why are we trying to cannibalize a missing middle neighborhood and make it a high-rise Airbnb, come and get it, free-for-all, REIT investment group? This is just wrong. You know this. If you really want to provide more housing, make it throughout the entire city. Make the ruling the same for all lots, all residential lots. Everybody's willing to go up some, but don't just eat. It's like cannibalizing our own neighborhood.
Thank you.
We got here.
Thank you. Mr. Carrico.
Good morning. My wife and I retired here to Hyde Park about 5 years ago from foreign service work in about 8 different large capitals around the world, where we lived in inner city, very diverse, mixed neighborhoods. We like those types of neighborhoods. That's why when we built our home here, we built it in Hyde Park, which has got 70% rentals and which has got lots of RM1 type of multifamily housing. We like all that. We like the diversity here. If you really want more diversity, if you want a lot of multiplexes all over the place, I have contacts back where I worked in Canada, large pension funds that would be happy to listen to you, who these same funds already have investments around in the suburbs of Austin, okay? So that wouldn't be a problem for me to put you in contact with these companies. However, I would prefer not to do that. I would prefer to quote what Nick Barbero wrote in his Chronicle article a couple of weeks ago. Upzonings favor corporate and absentee investors. The increases in land valuations, property taxes, and rent will shift development opportunities away from homeowners and small local developers in Austin to large corporate investors like the ones I know in Germany and Canada. So please consider what he was writing there in his article. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm now going to call the next panel. Is Daniel Yanis here? Come on down. What about Melanie Dixon? Melanie Dixon here? Yes? Thank you. What about Paula Kaufman? Is Paula here? No? Oh, there you are. Got you. Okay. What about Sarah Campbell? Okay, come on down. What about Gary Westerman? You come on down. And I think I have room for one more. Is David King here? King, why don't you come down? You have donated time from Natalie Axe. Is Natalie here? Yes, okay, thank you. You'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Yanis, you have 2 minutes.
Am I on? Thank
Yes.
you. Can you put that up, please? Liz Mueller, in her presentation, which you all hired her to do, that talks about displacement and gentrification and systemic racism, she starts out by saying Austin's prosperity has come at the expense of East Austin. So as you look at that graph, the city already recognizes our systemically racist legacy. And that legacy is perpetuated by zoning initiatives just like this one. On December 7th, I submitted to you a slightly detailed thing. I hope that you all go back and revisit this, December 7th, what I gave to y'all. So right now I'm just going to touch some points on that. And the first thing is, given this chart and given our legacy, using another land development code to do the same exact thing, I'm suggesting to you that you do no upzoning in East Austin and what the mayor has now identified, the Eastern Crescent. This is real equity, not just lip service. The second thing that I would suggest is that that before you adopt the land development code, you create a commission to put together an anti-displacement strategy. Displacement mitigation and with all due respect to you, the overlay for displacement is not enough, flat not enough. It gives lip service. Then I would say, and I'm grateful to Councilmember Tova for this, but I would go even a little further, that the existing neighborhood plans, city staff work with us. I am the chair of Go Valley Johnson Terrace Neighborhood Plan, the third adopted by the city in 2003. I suggest that staff meet with us and we change the names, but not upzone it. The fourth thing I will say is a more general thing, and that addresses climate change. Our tree canopy. We must stop cutting trees down for a many variety of reasons.
Mr. Yanis, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Yep. Ms. Dixon? Go ahead, you have 2 minutes. Hang on a second. Would you press the button on the base of your thing? Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Melanie Dixon, and I'm here on behalf of the Martin Luther King Neighborhood Association. We are located, our boundaries consist of Martin Luther King to Airport, Springdale, and then back over to Airport. So we're kind of in a square. And what we're seeing right now is a great deal of density in our neighborhoods, especially on Comida. We are very, very concerned about safety issues. We are concerned about the drainage. We are also concerned about the trafficking that's coming that will not be accessible going in and out of that area. In the past, within the last month or so, I've received letters and phone calls from many of my residents in our area with great concerns also about being bullied from contractors who are threatening them and telling them that their land is insignificant. So what I'd like to do basically is say that everyone should receive a notice of filing application for rezoning for the 3.5 acre plot that is being planned right now, which is a very large apartment complex off of 12th Street and Springdale. That this 3.5 acre plot of land uphill from Comita Street and 420 of East 12th zoning, the case is 614-2020-0003. This land is currently old growth urban forest and zoned SF3NP. Like most of the surrounding areas and neighborhoods, the proposed rezoning would change the area to MF6MP, which is total density. Also in that area, we also have a cemetery there that is historical. So with that said, the developers have proposed creating a 215 unit.
You need to wrap up.
In conclusion, please reconsider making changes for greater density in what is considered within neighborhoods.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ms. Kaufman.
Mayor?
Yes, sorry, Councilman Poole.
I would like to ask the city manager to check on the notification that's being requested for that particular case to find out if it's appropriate there as far as the distance, and to see about making sure that the neighbors receive that notification under our standard notification procedures. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kaufman, you have 2 minutes.
Don't Houston, my Austin. Wonder why the city wants to give away its ability to negotiate with developers by increasing the by right entitlement. It's the developers that need to be funding the infrastructure needed to handle the extra capacity. The impact fees in no way cover what this extra stormwater capacity, for example, in the urban core needs. And it's not correct when you say, well, the developers need to make 7% on their capital and they're not going to do anything. It's not fair that those of us, we've got capital too. It's called land. And it's not fair to take away from the many so that some of the developers can make more money. So you're going to have to keep your property taxes at 3.5%. I paid $70,000 in ad valorem tax this year. You're getting 3.5% more, and that's it. Seeing my tax dollars going to pay infrastructure upgrades so that developers can have more and more density, instead of letting the city say, hey, if you can only build 200 units, but you want to build 300 units, you can do that if you contribute the money that you need to do that, if you create affordable housing. So we've been told in the urban core, get flood insurance. That's $760 dollars a year. So why should I pay $3,380 more a year when none of my properties are in a floodplain so that the developers can put more density in? The higher taxes also displace tenants. Ask your homeless people how they got to be homeless. I would love to see a program for tenants to be able to buy the homes from their landlords. That will keep the flow of displacement away.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell, we have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. For background, I'm a UT graduate, also a graduate of the LBJ School. I spent over 40 years, mostly on the East Coast, as a transportation planner, urban policy analyst, and municipal budget expert, particularly the capital budget. I have served as the urban program coordinator for the U.S. Secretary of Transportation. I have been the head of the transportation planning for the District of Columbia, and as I have also been an overseer of a $1 billion annual capital budget. Incidentally, I also founded a nonprofit that invented, tested, and advocated for Safe Routes to School, which is now a program in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. After listening to the December 3rd working session on tape, I felt I really needed to come down here and talk. The capacity that has been mapped as part of the LDC seems to be at a level that will sacrifice the core of this city for the growing outer regions, which are largely left untouched. Thank you to the gentleman who mentioned Spicewood Springs and some of the other roads that should be considered. When you concentrate rapid development in an area, you get, from my experience in working in more than a dozen cities, piecing them back together after urban renewal, what you get is a change that the community cannot absorb. You get, and what you will get, especially because of the financial incentives that you've included in the LDC, you will get private urban renewal in Austin, Texas. What we don't have now, we do not have that, even though people like me live in a neighborhood that is 60% rental. I have some students who live next door to me, thank you very much, and I don't always like their music, but we get along. It's a wonderful, diverse central city. Where you need to be doing the work is where you have not put your attention. That makes it easier, I guess, to approve this because most of the council members here represent those districts. But for those of us who care about the central city,
thank you.
Then I think it's time for you all to think about a different approach, and a polycentric approach is much more sound in terms of giving you the results and achieving the goals, which I agree with. I agree with
Thank
the
you very
densification.
much. And thank you for being with us today. Gary Westerman, you have 2 minutes.
My name's Gary Westerman.
You're on.
Okay, name is Gary Westerman. I'm a 28-year-old female with a baby that was supposed to be here in my place. I have read all the 1,382 pages of the report. I've looked at the maps, and I would like to present what was coming up for Gary Westerman. So this having gone to all of your staff, I think it was yesterday or the day before, looking for the map and what I'm supposed to be presenting. Okay, this is it right here. Hopefully my 2 minutes isn't used. You can see where the neighborhood is being devastated by this one. We're at Palmer on the north, and we have Lamar on the east, and you can see where that's 40% of it is taken up. That's not equitable to us. The PUDs and MUDs. The city council decided not to include PUDs and MUDs, and so that isn't fair to the rest of them. Take your time and your money and include PUDs and MUDs. Preservation of protected trees. The city goal is 50%. City current is 35%. Our neighborhood is 80% canopy. A developer only has to demonstrate and get a waiver for the following to move a protected tree, which is as large as my shoulders. A heritage tree is twice as large as my shoulders, and they only have to, one, that it prevents reasonable access to the property, or number two, a reasonable use of the property, and they get to get a waiver, and they get to cut it down or remove it. Preservation of homes, that's only a cute preservation, the word. That's just saying people can add an ADU. I add a little bit more because of that. Localized flooding. Our neighborhood, Atlas 14, has raised the floodplain 3 feet. That's impacting the neighborhood. Sidewalks. A developer can pay a fee instead of putting in sidewalks, which we have none of. Historical degradation. Okay, I think maybe that was it. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours. Mr. King, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, and thank you for considering my comments and for your service. Mayor Adler, at the council work session on February 4th this year, said, quote, I recognize that if we upzone a piece of property in a particular area, we could be speeding dislocation for people that live there. So there you have it. The new code could increase displacement, could contribute to more displacement. So data produced by the City of Austin Innovation Office, I-Team, indicates that over 232,000 households in Austin are at risk of involuntary displacement. That means they don't want to leave. If each of these households require just $5,000 annually to avoid displacement, this city would need over $1.1 billion for displacement mitigation programs. Guess how much we have? $7.45 million. That's it. It's a drop in the bucket. It's like trying to put the fires out in Australia with a little hand spray bottle. It's not going to work. In fact, at $5,000 per family, the $7.45 million will help 1,490 of those 232,000 households. At that rate, it would take over 156 years to help all the households at risk of displacement in Austin. Seattle's annual displacement mitigation budget is over $110 million, 14 times larger than Austin's. Over the next 10 years, displacement pressures will increase from the proposed upzonings, from the billions of dollars in new transit, utility, and water infrastructure planned for Central and East Austin, the billions of dollars in upzoning and transit-oriented development entitlements on transit corridors across the city, and the billions of dollars in upzoning and development entitlements in Central and East Austin neighborhoods. These massive infrastructure investments and upzoning will increase displacement pressures on low and middle income families and small locally owned businesses in Central and East Austin. We can and must prevent displacement of these families and businesses, even as we plan for new residents and businesses. First, we must dramatically increase funding for displacement prevention programs. Next, while we ramp up the displacement mitigation programs, and I'm going to call them displacement prevention, because mitigation implies that displacement is going to occur, we can't do anything about it, so we might as well help them get on down the road faster. That's what mitigation is. It's not preventing displacement. So let's call it what it is. If we have a prevention plan, it means we're going to stop the displacement, not facilitate it. We need planning teams to facilitate community-driven, data-based, and context-sensitive planning processes and displacement mitigation programs. Those should go in place hand in hand before we do any upzoning. When the new code is ready, we should limit the upzoning to lots that directly front transit corridors and activity centers and avoid this citywide blanket upzoning. The next thing we should do is utilize median family income based on census tract for displacement mitigation programs. The goal is to help ensure that displacement mitigation programs are more equitable to Black and Latino families.
Thank you.
A recent report, and I'm on my last sentence, Mayor, thank you. A recent report by the UT Latino Studies indicates that the median family income for Black and Latino families is roughly $45,000, while the median family income for white families is $103,000. And my last point here is, if we use the median family income for the city of Austin, that's $81,400. 60% of that is $48,000, which is above the median family income for Black and Latino families.
Thank you very
the
much.
programs will never help those Latino and Black families. Thank you.
Let me call the next panel to join us. Is Barbara MacArthur here? Barbara MacArthur? Coming, thank you. Is Philip Perry here? Philip Perry? No? Is Barbara Epstein here? What about Paul Russos? Come on down, sir. Is Gus Pena here? No? What about Sammy Easterday? Miss Easterday here? Yes. Is Jim Lee here? Jim Lee? No. What about Kelly Griswold? Come on down. And what about Mary Engel? Why don't you come on down? I think we may have room for one more. Ms. Engel, you have time donated from Deaton Bednar. Is in here? Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes, Ms. Engel. Is Joyce Basciano here? Okay, why don't you come on down? You have time donated from Rick Iverson. Is Rick Iverson here? No? Why don't you hold on a second? I think all my places are full, so I'll come back to you. Is Ms. MacArthur, why don't you go ahead? You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Barbara MacArthur. I'm going to be short and sweet. Using your data, maybe not sweet. I calculated the amount of capacity that you are creating in existing neighborhoods, SF neighborhoods in Austin, not counting any preservation incentive units or any bonus units in transition zones. If you just do the math, which is on this piece of paper, you're creating capacity with your new zoning for 956,000 units within existing SF3 and less restrictive areas. In transition zones alone, you're creating capacity for 176,000 units. Now, something else I'd like to say. I commend you for removing the R4 zoning in East Austin, but in a lot of cases, it's been replaced by R3 and R2C. And I would say when you're displaced, it doesn't matter if you're displaced by 4 units or 5 units or 10 units, you're still being displaced when more entitlements are being put on the property. So let's be honest and not just pretend we're protecting the Eastern Crescent.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Barbara Epstein, and I live in Hancock.
Hold on one second. I think you might have had some time that was donated that showed up late. Hang on one second.
Okay, I'm sorry. Couldn't hear you very well.
Hold on one second, please.
Sorry.
Hold on one second, please. Hang on just one second.
He said,
I want to make sure that you
okay.
get all the time that's coming to you. And why don't you go ahead? You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. You've already heard from several other speakers that the new code isn't more concise, doesn't simplify the zoning process, and it doesn't guarantee affordability. But it's still so complicated that only a developer's consultant can navigate it. The latest preservation option doesn't even meet the threshold of the national standard and simply gives developers an additional unit per lot. You haven't given us a reason why this code must be adopted by March. We should be allowed to do more than just speak here today about what happens to our own neighborhoods. Austin's said to be one of the hottest real estate markets in the country, but there's a finite amount of land to develop and apparently an infinite number of wealthy people moving here willing to buy expensive condos and homes. I, like countless other seniors, have no plan B for where I could live. But I'm supposed to be on board with this code because you've told us that you've looked at a map. I suppose it's easier to displace people if you don't have to actually see where they live first. People will still continue to commute from other towns under your proposed code because it doesn't ensure affordability or a pleasant place to live. I have to wonder why you've chosen to intensely develop my neighborhood that's already dense and mixed use and still has green space. Or is it just that the money that stands to be made in certain areas is more important to you than our city's quality of life? You say we need the missing middle, but we also need the missing infrastructure and the missing budget for it. We don't have the prerequisites for this kind of density: a walkable city with adequate sidewalks, an efficient bus transit, upgraded water and sewer systems, essential green space and flood control, enough code enforcement staff. Austin's future depends on this code being more innovative and thoughtfully planned, and neighborhoods should have a real say in it. Thank you.
Paul Roussos.
Thank you. My name is Paul Roussos. Thank you for the time allowed me.
I think you need to press the speakerphone. Then you have 2 minutes.
It does on? Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah, my name is Paul Roussos. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. I live at 7303 Westgate Boulevard. since 1979. I came to Austin in 1963. The reason I'm here today is to request not to upzone 2R4 my home and my segment of Westgate Boulevard, 1.2 miles. I'm opposed to the proposed upzoning. So I'm proposing to zone the segment as R2A. The R2A zoning will be consistent with the zoning for sections of Westgate, north of William Cannon, and south of Davis Lane. Here's some other reasons. My Westgate neighborhood is not located in Imagine Austin centers or corridors. Also, it's not located in the Transit Priority Network or Urban Core. The local bus routing is not high frequency, and thus is not on the Transit Priority Network. Mapping 1.2 miles on Westgate SR4 is contrary to the City Council's directive to limit depth to 5 lots. Building more than 4 to 8 lots without adequate parking will add more problems to our dangerous street on Westgate, where we have about 16,000 cars a day go by my house. Cutting down trees, we have many old trees, that would be a shame. We do have flooding periodically from other lots. Upzoning may not yield the expected number of units because of those reasons, the reason why homes are built. The proposed R4 zoning may increase the vulnerability for displacement of seniors, renters, and disabled neighbors in our diverse population. We do have a diverse population. And then I want to say, of course, the market value and higher taxes as a possibility. But lastly, I want to say that the city should use new data for determining high opportunity areas, which are a criteria for identifying where the map transition zones are. My segment of Westgate is a small part of such area, Census Tract 1728.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ms. Easterday, you have 2 minutes. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Sammy Easterday, and I'm not here to talk about any particular neighborhood. But as I sit here and as I have watched your proceedings in the previous discussion of this, you've got it upside down. You're making citizens who are as smart as any of you behind that dais try to interpret 1,800 and some odd pages of a draconian land development code that doesn't represent the city whatsoever. This draconian fiscal segregation code revision has never really been publicly vetted. Council members have no time to read through it, much less digest it. And the citizens have to stop their lives to try and figure it out. Staff are notoriously late getting needed information to council members, commissions, or the public if they get the requested information at all. So far, many of the core neighborhoods on the east side of town especially have been effectively wiped out or mortally wounded. We abhor a war that does this to a neighborhood when we see it on the nightly news, but you could be doing this by fiat. Your weapons are bulldozers, unregulated planning staffers, and most of all, developmental and real estate entities with the money to buy off almost anything and anybody. Your legacy may be a notch in your political belt if you force this code on citizens so you can go on to politically to bigger and better things on your resume. But the legacy you will leave also will include that you are the people who destroyed Austin neighborhoods, the one who made Austin's another large, tasteless tangle of buildings for a very transient population. This does not even consider the fiscal downturn that will surely come with empty locations, developers long gone with their money, your projected tax base in the sewer, and the incurred expenses falling on the backs of the citizens you have so far realistically ignored. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Jim Lee? I think, no? I think we didn't get him. Kelly Griswold, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Carlton Wellman. I'll be speaking for my wife, Kelly Griswold, who couldn't be here. We too live in the North Loop area and think it's unfairly getting a large percent of its area coded, upzoned, and labeled a TPN. If you've driven through our area, it's kind of hard to get through. You have to weave in and out of cars, and their streets are too narrow, and so if those were lined, you could not get 2 cars through at the same time in almost every street except for possibly Duval, which has a temporary bus route on it. So that's probably the reason in which it might have been labeled that, but it just doesn't seem to fit our neighborhood very well. In addition to that, we don't really have sidewalks anywhere, so if there was all these added congestions in cars and vehicles, it would just be a really dangerous area, I think, to actually walk around with our children and our dogs and just get from here and there. I specifically live on the 55th and a half street, so District 4, where our whole street was now upzoned with the new amendment. So the street was built in 1952, so all of the trees are incredibly large trees, and the setbacks would destroy half of those that would exist there, so thus changing the area particularly. I would suggest just being a little bit more thoughtful on the types of buildings that could exist here. The setbacks being 10 feet is just too close to the street. It should probably be a lot closer to what the houses that exist currently so they could blend in more. And then the heights themselves is just too tall for a residential area. 40 to 45 feet is, absurd considered some of the homes that live there, or mine in particular is a 2-story, and it's only 25 feet tall. I can't imagine what near double that would look like. It would block out the sun. So I just want to express my concern about the North Loop area in particular.
Thank you. What was your first name?
Carlton Willman.
Thank you, Carlton. Ms. Engel, you want to talk to us? You have 3 minutes.
Mary Engel, citizen from District 9. Since there have only been 6 business days to review this plan and the mapping, I have some very general statements to make, but please extend the review time. This was not enough time to look everything over carefully. Please remove the transition zones and the density that are impacting our neighborhoods negatively, such as Duval Street, which is not a corridor. It doesn't go anywhere. These entitlements that are on Duval, RM1, which allow group residential, are not appropriate next to university areas. Group residential means fraternities and sororities, and we've already done this. I know, I've survived this kind of planning. And please defer to our council member Tovo for what is best about what's happening in District 9. She's been respectful to y'all. The preservation incentive is not good planning, and it's a farce because it doesn't require structures to be preserved. The code is not helping East Austin by deceitfully upzoning properties there and then equating them with 3 categories that are similar, to SF3. There is a Latin word that describes this broken process. It's nefas, N-E-F-A-S, which means unspeakably bad or wrong. It is the root word for nefarious. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the next panel, Joyce Basciano. You have time donated by Rick Iverson. Is Mr. Iverson here? No? So you'll have 2 minutes. Austin Talbert? Okay. What about Scott Turner? Scott Turner here? No? What about Michael Fossum? Is Michael Fossum here? Come on down. Zola Vega? Machena? Why don't you come on down? David Sullivan? Mr. Sullivan here? No? What about Adam Greenfield? Adam Greenfield here? No? What about Fred Lewis? Mr. Lewis, why don't you come on down? And then I think there's one more spot at our table. Here's Mr. Sullivan. Why don't you come on down too? All right, let's begin with Ms. Basciano. Hang on, your microphone needs to be on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. This process, like the original Code Next process, is broken. More time is needed to review the second draft. 6 business days is not enough time to review 1,300 pages of code and the mapping which is changed. Eliminate the transition zones. The one-size-fits-all approach used across the city is not going to give us the affordable housing we need. If the RM1 zone entitles a developer to build 6 market rate units on a lot that was previously zoned single family, then there is no incentive to build affordable bonus units, and that's especially true in West Austin. In addition, the reduction or elimination of on-site parking coupled with the absence of sidewalks will make the walk to our neighborhood schools and bus stops more dangerous. In the 1980s, the authors of the current Land Development Code took a neighborhood's substrate and topography into consideration. That helped them to identify infrastructure capacity in areas of localized flooding. The proposed code shows little consideration for the environment. Example, transition zones in my neighborhood, which is Briker Woods, are on the highest ground. The increased impervious cover and building heights of these transition zones will not only exacerbate existing localized flooding by increasing the runoff, it will also leave little or no room for the critical root zones and canopies of mature shade trees. Focus on real solutions for displacement instead of just catering to the development oligarchs who are trying to line their pockets by displacing all of us, even middle-class people on the west side. This isn't planning, it's plundering. Austin is still a divided city. Many believed when Code Next was withdrawn in August 2018 that City Council would direct a new city manager to create a real community-driven planning process based on valid data that would produce a reasonable, easy-to-understand and use code. That didn't happen, and now many feel betrayed. Thank you.
Thank you. Austin Talbert, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Weird Austin from District 1. So any moment now, we're actually going to, I have a weird feedback. Oh, she's off. We're going to cross the 1 million mark here in Austin. It could happen any day now. It could be someone in a U-Haul or on a megabus, come from an airport, or it could be someone born in one of our hospitals, right? They think, and one of the reasons they're coming here is we have this wonderfully unique, beautiful place. But the surprise that they'll be in for is there's nothing weird or unique about being the fastest sprawling metro area in the country, about being the most suburban of all metro areas in Texas, which is the most suburban of all states in the country, because everything we do is bigger in Texas, right? So I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with a single family home. I live in one. A lot of people live in one. No one has ever said that. Single family homes are amazing. But there's nothing weird about it either, right? The pattern of development that makes up our city is mostly post-World War II sprawl. We're a young city, right? So we have a very limited number of these traditionally developed neighborhoods. We need to allow this in the code to happen. We don't need to just protect it in Hyde Park. We need to re-legalize Hyde Park, both in Hyde Park, but all over the city. We're talking about walkable to businesses, mixed use. We're talking about incremental density where local people can add units for multi-generational housing, where they can add units to help defray their costs, when they can add units to allow neighbors and artists to live with them. This is the weird kind of housing I've been talking about for months, right? Reserving the majority of your city only for single-family homes with high minimum lot sizes is the most unweird thing you can do. It is literally cookie cutter. It is Levittown post-World War II, and that's the majority of our city. We can fix it now. We still have time, Council. We elected you to make the hard choices. Please, in this week, do that. It will be uncomfortable, but give us a chance to be weird again. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Scott Turner. Is Scott Turner here? I think he was not. Michael Fossum, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Council. My name is Michael Fossum. I'm with the Austin Heritage Tree Foundation, and I live in South Austin. We thank Councilmember Ellis for her amendment for heritage tree preservation and ask Council to approve it. We support this amendment because the only way to save the hundreds of heritage trees that will be removed administratively in corridors with the changes in the LDC. Hundreds of the largest and oldest heritage trees will be affected since corridors take a large area of the city. Please change the name from Heritage Tree Preservation Bonus to Supplemental Heritage Tree Preservation Program, because staff responded that a preservation bonus is not indicated since code already requires preservation, and that a tree preservation bonus would conflict with the affordable housing bonus. But they did not try at all to develop this bonus, and they did not explain the conflicts. This program is not a bonus, but a critical tool to save heritage trees in high-density conditions. It is needed as a supplement to the Heritage Tree Ordinance for developments in corridors due to the priority for high density. Staff is also reluctant to develop this program because they are currently very busy with the LDC, but this is the only tool that will allow staff to preserve heritage trees in corridors. Please approve the amendment's condition that staff develops the supplemental heritage tree preservation program after LDC approval, and also make 3 changes to the amendment. Delete that it applies to activity centers because the high-density development will be along the corridors, not the centers. Add a time frame to complete the program within 3 months from code approval. Add for the Urban Forestry Committee of the Environmental Commission to form a working group with staff to develop this program, or at least for this committee to review the program. If you can bring my slide up, please. The public process needs to be restored for transparency and to provide leverage to staff when they negotiate preserving heritage trees with applicants. Staff has not restored the public process but limited the administrative variance to only transit priority network corridors instead of all corridors, but the transit priority network corridors are 75% of the corridors, and hundreds of trees will be removed.
Thank
and
you.
You can see that on this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Vega, you have 2 minutes.
Soy La Vega Marchena with the Austin Heritage Tree Foundation. We can have high density in corridors and preserve heritage trees, but not the way staff proposes. Please restore the public process. The supplemental heritage tree preservation program should be managed administratively, but the public variance process needs to be restored. This is similar to the current public variance process where staff manages administratively, do review, but the variance is public. Please correct these 2 changes from first reading. Staff changed the requirement for residential use from 75% to 50% because of the PC's recommendation, but council approved 75% per staff's recommendation. 75% residential use should be required since the intent is to provide housing. The staff changed from affordable housing to low-income housing, which is not defined in the LDC. The staff claims that the administrative variance will affect only a few heritage trees because the heritage tree ordinance condition will still have to be met. However, the LDC is removing the protection of heritage trees in corridors. Preservation will no longer be required by code for those heritage trees because non-zoning regulations will take second place to high density. The staff created the administrative variance for those largest and oldest heritage trees to facilitate the removal and not delay the process when land commission hearings for variances. The staff says that very few heritage trees will be affected because in addition to the 2 heritage tree ordinance requirements, they're requiring that the tree not be transplantable and that the development be 50% residential and provide at least 10% on-site low-income housing. However, the truth is the staff will not even look at any of these conditions because they will claim that the tree prevents reasonable use of property since in corridors, high density is prioritized over non-zoning regulations. The last 3 additional requirements don't reduce the number of heritage trees affected because they're easily met. Most larger heritage trees in corridors are not transplantable because there's no place to transplant them to, and most developments are mixed use and meet the 50% residential use, and developers can provide 10% affordable on-site units without hardship. They often do that voluntarily.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Mayor, Council, and City Manager, I support the code rewrite process and look forward to the final version. The second reading draft has implemented new affordability elements and a new reserved section that may help boost the arts and music in Austin, for which I'm very, very much appreciate. I encourage you to look at the Housing Works recommendations for additional affordability ideas. In particular, I think it is important to look at allowing new market rate and below market rate housing along corridors and on streets near the corridors and activity centers in high opportunity areas in West Austin. I encourage you to continue to protect Austin arts and music culture by supporting the mayor's idea to create a live music venue land use that is separate from bar and nightclub. With regard to safety and the environment, I remind you that this code has new requirements that will lead to the capture of millions of gallons of stormwater. A simple calculation that shows that 1 inch of rainfall over a square mile is 17 million gallons. And that's just 0.3% of the city. So I believe staff is going to bring forward some numbers about how much stormwater capture will be is in the new code. In addition, by creating new housing in transit-rich and mixed-use areas, this can reduce driving per capita. There's a lot of data showing that in areas that you have more housing and commercial uses, VMT per capita drops. And also by allowing shared walls with missing middle, condos, and apartments, that leads to reduced energy use because of the increased fact that you have more insulation. Lastly, I encourage you to keep on working on compromises to ensure a unanimous vote, or at least getting close to that, as we achieved with the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. Thank you very much for all the hard work on this.
Thank you. Mr. Greenfield, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. My name is Adam Greenfield. I'm Board President of Walk Austin. Walk Austin supports a new land development code, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the vision, the bravery, the courage, the commitment you put into this code. We are all in your debt of gratitude for that. There's been, rightly so, a strong focus on number of units and affordability in this code. We also need to dovetail that with walkability. If your city has walkability, that is an indicator species that you have done the right thing with your development. Walkable cities are sustainable, they are affordable, and they facilitate the social exchange, which is one of the key reasons we moved to cities in the first place. We know what that looks like. We've been doing it for thousands of years. It's buildings that touch each other. It's buildings that touch the sidewalk. It's off-site parking. It's narrow streets for the most part. That's what we need in this code. We have been really grateful to y'all for considering Walk Austin's recommendations, and those include the recommendation to eliminate or reduce front setback requirements in residential, mixed-use, and Main Street zones. Christopher Alexander, in the best-selling urban design book of all time, A Pattern Language, wrote, "Building setbacks have helped destroy the street as a social space. The more we can move buildings back to the street, the more walkable, the more beautiful, the more affordable they will be." We thank Councilmember Flanagan for sponsoring an amendment to require bike and pedestrian mixed-use paths going through large new developments. That's a great one. We hope to see that in there. We look forward to parking in buildings counting towards FAR. If we have FAR, everything should count towards it. And you can see our recommendation document with the other recommendations. Thank you so much for your work, and good luck.
Thank you. Okay, let's get the next panel up here. If I call your name, could you please raise your hand? Fred Lewis, thank you. Is Teresa Holmes? No? What about Anthony Strahan? No? What about Chris Allen? No? What about Gina Allen? What about William Quinn? Come on down, thank you. Angela Garza? No. William Barnes? Come on down. Alicia Weigel? Come on down. And is Pat Conegliano here? Why don't you come on down? I think I have one more seat at my table. Is Megan Meisenbach here? Come on down. Mr. Lewis, you have 2 minutes.
Whatever we call, whatever labels we give to the land development code.
Why don't you press the button? I don't think you're getting recorded.
It's okay. Whatever label you put on the land development code, that it's progressive, that it promotes desegregation or is equitable, whatever theories you promote, the market, housing markets are going to determine what happens under the land development code. And we know some things about the market, or at least we should. One, housing markets never have and never will produce low and modest income housing. This is the New Deal Bible, 75 years old, on housing, says doesn't provide low and modest income housing. Didn't then, won't now. The second thing is that displacement is caused by the market, aided by the government. So the only way to prevent displacement is to take things off the market by making them public or subsidized, or restricting the market. That means downzoning. However, in East Austin, when you cut through it all, whether they're transition zones or whatever, you have upzoned the vast majority of it. You've given more entitlements. SF2 and SF3 are not the same thing as R2 and R3. There will be 3 units instead of 1, and the whole purpose of that is redevelopment. So at the end of the day, you can call it progressive, you can call it socialist, but you will be pushing people of color and low and modest people out of this city because you are relying on the market. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Teresa Holmes is not here. Either is Anthony Strahan or Chris Allen or Gina Allen. Is William Quinn here? Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is William Quinn, and I am on the biology faculty at St. Edward's University. However, I represent myself, and I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem, City Manager, and City Council members the opportunity to speak to you. I returned to Austin in 1983 after earning advanced degrees in the lab of the nation's leading urban forestry expert. By happy accident, when I returned, I was reintroduced to a woman who used to sit not in your chairs, but she served on the city council. Her name was Margaret Hoffman. I have a visual aid to try to stimulate you and wake you up, but you don't need to push any buttons back there. If you would look out the windows across the street, across Cesar Chavez, you'll be looking at Margaret Hoffman Oaks Park. Margaret Hoffman helped establish, as a city council member, she was the Austin Tree Ordinance Force. And through her work, we have protected your urban forest, our urban forest, with some diligence in a way that is the envy of many cities across the world. A few years ago, I was in Angers, France, speaking to the mayor of the city. While he praised your work and the difficult things you have to do, he also said that Austin's tree ordinance is a foundation that many cities across the world should follow. I ask you to consider your predecessor's legacy, and I ask you to consider the value that the urban forest offers to this city and modify the proposed code rewrite to protect heritage trees, all trees, to the maximum extent possible. The return on your investment will be inconceivable over the long term. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Angela Garza's not here. William Barnes, you have 2 minutes.
Hi. I just have a few things. I'm going to try to be terse and concise in order to fill up my 2 minutes. I was born and raised in Dallas. I moved here in 1983. At that time, rush hour lasted from about 5:10 to 5:30, and it meant that you had to slow down about 45 or 50 miles on Mopac. Now see where we have come now as we've become a burgeoning metropolis. I don't think it's in the best interest of the character of our city to do things that try to attract more people to come here. We don't have the infrastructure to support the people that already are here, much less trying to get more. Bigger is not better. And I'd also like to say that for a code of the size and complexity that we're presented with, it's a travesty to try and vote on this anytime real soon. This is going to require a lot of review by citizens and citizen advocacy groups in order for us to be able to understand exactly what it does mean for us. I believe in the neighborhood I live in, it's an older historic neighborhood, that the effects of such building multiple multifamily dwellings would just be devastating to our neighborhood. The amount of cars parked on the street will preclude two-way traffic in our narrow streets, and it would just be terrible. So I urge you to postpone finalizing any sort of action such as this for at least several months, but not any time this week or next. And finally, to say that if you are indeed a transparent and representative government agency, then you will require the input of your constituents to guide you in your vote. Thank you.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
Would you mind?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I missed your name, sir. I had to step off the dais for a minute.
I'm William Barnes. I'm one of your I sent you an email not long ago.
Thank you.
Speaker number 71. Alicia, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name's Alicia. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission, but I'm here representing myself and the overwhelming majority of the youth here in Austin who either have jobs or are in school and so can't come to a hearing in the middle of the day like today. I'm a resident of District 9, Councilmember Tovo's district, and I'll start off by saying that I'm sad to have missed living in Austin when it was still weird. It sounds like it was a pretty cool place. I've heard a lot of fun stories. And however, as a relative newcomer who's only been here for 3 years, I still think I've contributed a lot to this city, both as a human rights commissioner and otherwise, fighting for paid sick leave for all of our residents, increased access to reproductive rights, decreased sexual assault, and more. So rather than demonizing outsiders or NIMBYs, I hope that we can stop the inflammatory rhetoric and start really hearing each other's concerns. This involves acknowledging where we are today as a city, and I'd actually like to agree with Fred Lewis on something, which is that developers are gonna develop. And so if where we are now isn't working with us and hasn't been working for us, then I'm not sure why we wouldn't try to protect ourselves. And as someone who kind of unintentionally worked from the inside for a minute and saw how existing affordable housing is being demolished to make way for new housing, I know we need to do better by our people. And so we need to incentivize these developers to be more moral because unfortunately they've proven time and again that they're only going to do the bare minimum of what's required. And so that's why I really do think that we need to finally get around to updating this code. As a homeowner in Bolden Creek who hears the fear of my neighbors and our neighborhood association meetings, I also fear my property taxes spiking by the condos coming in next door. But more pressingly, as someone who's terrified for my future because of climate change, we don't have the luxury anymore of the status quo.
Thank you.
Our one-off attempts to kill projects and maintain the Austin that once was aren't going to be as effective as curbing problematic development with the new code.
Thank you very much.
Let's work together at making things better. Let's stop the stalling and the name calling and protect the remnants of what keeps us weird as a city. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Canigliano, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Mayor.
Hi.
Am I on now?
You
Okay.
are.
Good morning, Mayor and council members and Pro Tem. Thank you for all the time you've spent. This is a marathon project. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the time you're looking into and hearing from all the experts around here. I'm learning a lot too. So I've lived in Austin for 35 years. My husband and I have been in the same little bungalow south of the river. And we plan to age in place, 10, 20 more years, hopefully, and then pass our home on to our grandson. We really would like to do that. So we're asking that you not upzone our home so that he can afford to live there. We have filed a protest along with thousands of other Austinites who have filed a protest. So my background is a mediator, so I'm looking at a compromise here. How about not upzoning those of us who have filed a protest for 10 years? Your land code is for 10 years. See what your building needs are in 10 years. I also want to address solar. I sent all of you an email yesterday, which I know you haven't had time to look at. It's an article from the New York Times about our cities electrifying. And why can't we put, now that you're starting all this new development here, why not require solar panels to be put on all these high-rise buildings so that we could begin to wean off coal-fired power plant? Can you show that, the National Geographic? Yes, I wanted you to notice this. It's a wonderful special edition of National Geographic about cities of the future.
Thank you.
April 2019.
Thank you very much.
And, I'm done?
We know, yeah, time went.
Bam.
It goes so fast.
That's
Okay, musicians only make $10,000 to $15,000 a year.
Thank
so
you very
please
much.
don't upgrade,
So the next speaker
upzone,
that we
affordable
is
rentals.
Megan Meisenbach.
Okay.
Ms. Meisenbach, you have 2 minutes.
I actually have time donated by Mary Sanger, but I don't believe that I'm going to need it.
Okay, 2 minutes.
Good morning, council members, mayor. Thank you for all your hard work. I live in District 9, Kathy Tovo's district. I'd like to ask you, as many people have, to please slow down this hurried process. 6 business days is not adequate for you to understand the repercussions, the consequences of what's already written, and now there are new amendments. How can we know what this all adds up to? Probably it adds up to over 900,000 units, as Ms. MacArthur said. So I'd like to ask you also to use the People's Plan and the people as a resource to avoid displacement in the first place, not just mitigate it, but avoid it. And then I'd like to echo what so many people have said about heritage trees. It takes many, many trees, many, many years to equal the removal of carbon dioxide from the air that one heritage tree can do. And if we take those off of the corridors, we won't have a walkable city, I don't think. Many people walk in my neighborhood that has many, many trees. They walk their dogs, it's shady. If you remove them, it won't, not that we have a corridor, but if the heritage trees are removed from the corridors, it won't be as nice. So please slow down your process. Thank you.
Okay. The next panel. If I call your name, would you please raise your hand? Phyllis Warner, come on down. Edwin Spradley, come on down. Rick Russell. Okay. Rebecca Reynolds, come on down. David Foster, come on down. And I think we might have one more spot here. Is Pat Bukta here? Come on down. Edwin Spradley, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Council. My name is Edwin Spradley. I'm from the Castlewood Forest Oak Valley neighborhood. It's located in District 5, approximately 300 plus homes, tucked away between William Cannon and Slaughter, Manchac, and Westgate. You wouldn't find it unless you were looking for it, because it existed before South Austin existed. It was founded in the 60s, farmland converted into third of an acre plots of land, filled with Bergstrom Air Force Base retirees. Wide streets, big yards, homes big enough for multiple kids, and today with oak trees 50 feet tall. Nearest grocery store back then was on Ben White. I know all this because this is a very close and tight-knit community. The current demographics of our community are old retirees and young families. As the older folks pass on or move away, young families flock to this little oasis in South Austin, as did my family and I. Homes are not on the market long. It was through my military service that we were chosen among the many bidders for our home. I have served the Navy for 20 years of active and reserve service. In that time, I've had lots of experience in well-intentioned plans having unintended consequences. The future of Castlewood Forest Oak Valley community will be one of these unintended consequences. Our new zoning of 300-plus homes is designated R2A, which allows for replacing single-family homes with duplexes. Our greatest worry is our lots, each a third of an acre on average, could be split, then allowing for two duplexes to be built where there was once a single home. The big yards, big trees will be gone, and so will the families. And with them, the Halloween parades, the spring and fall picnics, the neighborhood Christmas party. On our street alone, half full of 80 to 90-year-olds will completely transform within 5 years. Single families are not to be able to outbid the developers who descend upon our community, whose only incentive is to maximize profit per lot demolished. Affordable housing incentives won't be able to compete. I applaud your efforts taking on a new land development code, and I do not envy your task, but I urge caution so you will not cause the unintended consequence of wiping away communities that are worth saving, that won't even accomplish your objective.
Is Phyllis Warner here? Okay, why don't you go ahead? You have 2 minutes. Hang on a second. You need to press the button. There's a button on the base.
I see.
That's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
I'm here to speak in opposition to Kazar 9 amendment, which is about the downtown density bonus program and inclusion of the Northwest District. I'm a property owner in the Panhandle portion, which is the part that is north of 15th Street, south of MLK, and east and west the boundaries are San Antonio and Rio Grande. This is an area that's not in any capital view corridor where increased density makes good sense and where property owners actually favor it. The groups consulted as stakeholders did not represent Panhandle property owners. Judges Hill is in the Judges Hill neighborhood. The Judges Hill Neighbor Association represents people who live in Judges Hill, and that's in the Judges Hill district, not the Northwest District. Awana is in the Northwest District, but its membership area is south of 15th Street. And Dana's members need to be residents of the downtown, and most of the property in our part of the Northwest District are offices. As discussed in my December 18th letter, the downtown Austin plan severely limited development in the Panhandle, especially ostensibly to protect single-family homes in Judges Hill, but that area already is well protected by topography and by buffering from structures on West Avenue and Rio Grande, most of which are 2, 3, or more story offices, apartment buildings, or condos. And those two streets are actually a transition to the residential part. The residential part is west of West Avenue. The highest parts of Judges Hill are along west, and the residential part slopes down to Lamar. The Panhandle is east of West Avenue, and the boundary is Rio Grande, which is 34 feet below street level on west, although some of the buildings along Rio Grande are restricted to 40 feet. Nueces at 60th Street is 60 feet below. Is that the end? Okay, so let me just say what I want to say. The amendment that's being proposed by Councilmember Kazar is even more restrictive than the downtown Austin plan. It leaves out half block from Nueces to Rio Grande was in the bonus program. That takes everything out. And what we hope is that you will include all of the area
Thank you.
west and also increase zoning to 120 feet in the whole area. And please read my letter. I've sent it to you about a million times.
That would be good. Thank you. Next speaker, Rick Russell.
My name is Rick. I live in Pages District, and I want to talk about an infrastructure that nobody spoke about today. If this council does the wrong thing and passes Code Next New, y'all will devastate the public education in this city. Imagine trying to tell teachers they're going to have to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, grading papers because they've got 40 or 50 kids in a classroom per class. Has anybody thought about that? Okay, so I see one. Thank you. The other thing I want to talk about is the majority of the people in this city can't afford to buy these houses that have come up for sale, pay $300,000, $500,000, $700,000 to tear them down, another $1 million to buy a house. But, Mr. Mayor, you can. With the businesses that you and your wife run, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you hold over $10 million in real estate? No? Okay. Then I stand corrected. But I want to ask y'all not to approve the new code next, because it will devastate the public education in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rebecca Reynolds.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for having us and listening to all of our points of view today. We did send over, I'm Rebecca Reynolds with the Music Venue Alliance and the nonprofit advocacy group Music Makes Austin. We did send over a letter yesterday of gratitude for all of the hard work that you're doing. We understand how much of a challenge this is, and we do believe that everybody has the best of intentions to come out with the best outcome. We want to be a partner in that, so just consider us a resource ongoing. We also want to thank you for considering the music community specifically in making these difficult decisions. We sent over a list of all of the reasons why we think creating a new land use distinct from bar nightclub is necessary and viable and important. So I'm not going to go through all of those arguments with you today, just in the interest of time, but we're always open for conversation around those things. I just had two things I wanted to add to what we sent over in our letter, and one is to convey to you a sense of urgency. We do have several legacy venues who are nearing the end of their current lease term. And if we don't do something very, very soon, we will lose them. And I don't want us to be surprised were they to close when we could have done something to prevent that. Number two is I know that there may be concerns about creating a new land use. How do we implement it? How do we regulate it? What does the oversight look like? And I just want to make sure that we use those as opportunities to come to a solution rather than using those as reasons not to do this. So let's just work together to find ways forward rather than being stymied by how are we going to do something new. Thank you very much for hearing us out.
Thank you. David Foster.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is David Foster, here to speak on behalf of Clean Water Action. And I want to begin, as I did last time, by thanking you for all your hard work, and in particular, the staff at Watershed Protection for continuing to meet with us and discuss some of our concerns. And it does feel like we've made some progress there, although we still have some distance to cover. I sent you an email this morning highlighting what we like about the second draft, as well as some of the amendments we like and some of the other amendments we have concerns over. And I believe you'll receive similar emails from Save Barton Creek Association and Save Our Springs Alliance. So real quickly, one of the things we do like is a new requirement that developments of 4 to 11 residential units of 50% or more impervious cover will have to submit a drainage plan demonstrating that the runoff is not going to flood their neighbors. This is something we were pushing for quite a while, and I'm glad to see that that's made it into the second draft. I also want to express support for Councilmember Kitchen's amendment number 6, which would, in the landscape section, allow more retention of stormwater and infiltration of stormwater on site by requiring that, enabling that to go to more vegetated areas. This is not something we've been able to get into the residential zones, unfortunately, but at least we think it can be beefed up here in the commercial zones. One amendment that I have to speak against, apologies, Councilmember Flanagan, and that's your amendment number 3. This would loosen detention requirements downtown that would allow fee in lieu instead of on-site detention. That might make sense from a drainage point of view. After all, it should be relatively easy to convey that water to the lake, but it does not make sense from a water supply perspective, and I believe undermines the city's water forward goals, part of which is, after all, to enable more retention of stormwater and other kinds of water on site so you can use that water inside the buildings to offset affordable use. So this is not only critical to the long-term well-being of our water supply, it's also an affordability issue because buildings that do that are not having to pay for potable water that's treated to potable standards, so I'd ask you to reconsider that. There's more to say. I don't know how many seconds I have left, but I look forward to working with you in the coming weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Pukta.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Pat Bukta. I am the Executive Director of Austin, Texas Musicians 501c4 nonprofit. I'd like to start by commending everyone on the dais today for all the historic work you're doing for our music community. I can tell you that it is being noticed and talked about and appreciated throughout our music community. Austin, Texas Musicians Board stands in support of a land development code rewrite that includes a music venue definition for the following reasons. Venues and musicians share a symbiotic relationship that makes up the very backbone of our live music economy. When venues do better, musicians do better, and the very tourism infrastructure of our city is supported. Music venues are currently treated the same as bars and nightclubs while having significantly higher operational costs without the added benefits that theater and other cultural art spaces enjoy. An added music venue designation will open the gateway for other tools through which our music community is supported, such as venue best practices and standards, a music-friendly business designation, which we're currently working on, and other ways in which venues exhibiting best practices are recognized and rewarded. Recent input from musicians attending Music Commission meetings and Austin, Texas Musicians Weekly Night Shift community building event highlight areas for improvement within business dealings between venues and musicians. We feel that this designation will allow all stakeholders to begin developing tools in which venues are better supported, and in turn, all musicians, including underrepresented and low-income artists, are able to rely on fair pay and transparent business practices. The work we do together now to support our creative class not only builds a more robust local economy, but also secures Austin's place as a trendsetter in building a shining example of a music city on the national level. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, we're down, I think, to the last three. Everyone's had a chance to speak? I'll call the next panel. We're down to the last few. When I call your name, would you please raise your hand? Is Mary Sanger here? Mary Sanger? No? What about Jordan Scott? Jordan Scott? No? What about Jessica Rollison? Why don't you come on down? Is there anybody else that has signed up to speak that has not been called? Why don't you come down as well? Anybody else that signed up to speak that hasn't been called? Would you give the clerk your name so she can make sure it's on the list? Mr. Rollison, you have 2 minutes. Press the button on the base. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for all your efforts and engagement over the years. I'm Jessica Rollison. I live in an apartment complex in District 9. Hi, Kathy Tovo. And I love my home here in Austin very much. My goals are to provide the homes we need while developing responsibly and sustainably. We have to prioritize equity and opportunity. This means more housing, and it means more units. How do we do this while preserving trees and critical watersheds? We need more height, we need smaller units, smaller lots, and less parking. Why do I care about more housing? People are coming regardless, and we can't stop urbanization. It's a global trend. Lower ecological footprint per capita is something that I also really care about, and that comes with density. I also care about affordability and diversity, walkability and public transport, all things that are supported by more density, more units, more housing, and a more diverse kind of product as well. I just ask my plea is to make this meaningful, forward-thinking, and inclusive. Let's define Austin's character by diversity, opportunity, upward mobility, inclusion, equity, and justice. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you please introduce yourself? You have 2 minutes.
My name is Claudette.
Would you press the button on the bottom?
My name is Claudette Lowe. I live in the District 9.
Hang on a second. I don't think your speaker came on. Press the button again.
Closer, is that better?
That's
no.
on now.
Okay. My name is Claudette Lowe. I live in District 9, just south of the river. We initiated the first neighborhood conservation combining district in the city. It was a brand new thing back then. We studied every piece of our neighborhood, every portion. We know where everything is and where we can put things. Then we had our neighborhood plan, and we did it again. So what I'm asking you to do is consider Kathy Tovo's motion to allow the neighborhoods to help you in planning this endeavor. And also, this has been said over and over, but I want to say it one more time because I hope you hear it. We need to be equal and put the density in the entire city and not just dump it in the middle of Austin. Thank you.
Sir, would you introduce yourself, please? And you have 2 minutes.
My name's Phil Perry. I live on Pearl Street, northwest of the university, and I work in construction, small housing construction here in town, at the moment over on Castle Hill. My main concerns are that, well, I agree with some of the goals, particularly in terms of allowing a bit more density along potential future transit corridors. At the moment, we don't really have transit. As it exists, the building code already allows for a great deal of increased density, which we don't have at the moment. There are numerous sites I've worked on which are in central city locations where they are either vacant or very underutilized. And there's a good deal of leeway for existing property owners to build reasonably dense and personal housing, which would be to the appropriate scale, which would be below the tree line, which would allow for the existing trees to be undisturbed. And much of the changes in the current proposal are about creating much larger scale 6-unit plus developments, which would probably be more of a corporate endeavor, not your local small scale construction or property owners' involvement. And they could dramatically change the neighborhood character. And there are a number of other issues which are frankly kind of hard to keep track of because the proposals have changed frequently, and there hasn't been very much time to study those changes. And there are also changes that are hinted at which are not being offered in this particular amendment, which may come in the future, but may also change because they're not up for this particular motion. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Those are all the people we've had signed up to speak. It is 1:03.